Okay, so today our first speaker is Dr. Alyssa Koehler. She's our extensive plant pathologist, and I'm going to let her introduce her outstanding team.
All right, well, welcome to Stop 1. As was introduced, my name is Alyssa, and I'm the field crops plant pathologist. So today I'll give you kind of a rundown of some diseases that we've been seeing in small grains, corn, soybean, and get to introduce my group of students that are here with me today. So far this year we have had fairly moderate to low disease pressure. We haven't seen too much around. With small grains, Fusarium head blight is the one that we often always worry about, and I think we've
I'm passing them out actively.
All right. So those samples that are coming around, you'll see some orange in there, and some bleached. Yeah, there's an arrow to the orange areas, and you may see some bleached areas. But that's what we look for Fusarium head blight, and that's one we worry a lot about because it can reduce yield, but it also has mycotoxins in it, which can then become a problem at the elevator. Did anybody have, if you're growing wheat, any mycotoxin issues this year, or make it through okay? Good year. I'd only heard a couple stories out of barley, some malting barley that got frost damaged, had a little bit of dawn trouble, but all in all, we had a pretty low Fusarium year. One of the things that we do is screening fungicides, both for timing and checking out new products. A couple years ago, Miravis came to market, and we were looking at kind of comparing that early, kind of before anthesis or flowering timing, right at flowering, and a little bit later. With that one, you can put it out at any time, but what we've been finding is that for dawn and some of that mycotoxin accumulation, you're better to put out right at flowering or a little bit after, within kind of that 5 days after type of window. This year and last year, we've also been looking at some new products that are coming to market. Spherex, which is sort of going to be the replacement product for Caramba, and then Prosara Pro has been another new one on the market as well. I'm going to pass this over to Joe Cinderella, who's a graduate student that's working on small grains, and he'll give you just a brief introduction on himself and his project.
Hello, I'm doing the wheat and barley project here, looking at Fusarium head blight. We have fungicide timing trials and fungicide efficacy trials to test these new products. I'm also, last year I received samples from the United States Wheat and Barley Scab Initiative, and then those were all from wheat Fusarium samples, and I ran a fungicide assay on them to test the effectiveness of the new SDHI active ingredient in Miravis. Got some novel data from that, and this year I'm collecting from barley fields, and then I'm also receiving samples from the surrounding states to run another test to see if there's any differences in the barley isolates.
All right, and so what Joe's trying to do there is, as we get new fungicides in, we want to make sure they continue to work. So we're gathering some baseline fungicide efficacy to make sure that as the years go on and we continue to use products, we don't have resistance out there, and that everything's still working the way it should be. Moving into corn, we've had some dry weeks, which hasn't been too kind to some of our dryland fields, but that does tend to keep a lot of our foliar disease pressure low. Gray leaf spot, which is a new samples getting passed around, is our number one corn disease that we see around. And what you're looking for are those square boxy lesions. And so this one, we see it pretty much every year. It's our number one, and that's what we target a lot of our fungicide work for. A new one that you may have heard about that we don't yet have here in Delaware is tar spot, but it's one to be on the lookout for. It is present in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It showed up there at the end of 2020. In Lancaster County, expanded to a few new counties last year. I just got the report about 2 weeks ago that they found it again in Lancaster County in the spots where it's already been observed. That one has, as the name says, tar spot, it kind of looks like little flecks of tar that are right there on the corn leaf. When you go to rub it, it'll stay on there. So one of the things that can easily be confused with is different insect poop that's out there. So if you rub the leaf and it goes off, it's probably poop and not tar spot. But so far we don't have it here in the state, but it is one where we've got a close eye on, because unfortunately it's probably just a matter of time. It's been kind of moving all across the U.S., and we're getting to be one of the few states that doesn't have it yet. In addition to gray leaf spot and some of our foliar trials, we also do some work on Pythium, and particularly early season, and looking at the impacts that Pythium have. And I will introduce my next grad student, Madeline Henrickson, who's doing a PhD on Pythium and corn. And I'll let you pass it.
Thanks, Alyssa. As Alyssa said, my name is Madeline Henrickson. I've been here for about 2 years now, and I work on Pythium. We're trying to develop a method so that we can detect Pythium before it's a problem, but it's still in the really early stages. What is being passed out to you right now is a really cool fungicide efficacy of method application. So comparing airplane passes to fungigation in the field. And we also were comparing some of the early season fungicides that you can use, like Xyway, which is flutriafol. Sorry, I forget the active ingredient name. And we looked at it both in furrow along the seed and 2x2, 2 inches down, 2 inches over. This year we're doing it again where it's 0x2 and 2x2. So kind of interesting, if you look at this sheet that we passed out, we saw that the airplane worked a little better than fungigation, but the good news is that all of the treatments worked better than no treatment. So really cool separation in some of the early season things we have that like we're going to try again next year. So that's kind of what I have for you, and I'm really excited to show you data from next year when we have it.
Awesome. And so in addition to this trial, we've been doing a little bit of fungigation work the past couple years as well. As Madeline mentioned, this particular trial with the airplane passes, the fungigation, and then looking at some of that 2x2, 2x0 is being repeated again. So keep an eye on weekly crop update. We'll be sending results out once the end of the season hits and we get some yield response there. So moving into one of our next crops, soybean. As far as foliar diseases go, it's been a very quiet year for soybeans. This heat has kind of helped keep a lot of our disease pressure low, but the big thing that we worry about here in the state is nematodes. So we have sandy soils and plenty of nematodes around. I've got two folks, one is on her way down that I'll introduce in a minute, and then the other is Lexi Kessler, who just finished her master's, and she, if you want to pass your survey around, one of the things that we've been doing the past couple years is kind of looking at survey of the region and just assessing how much of our ground has nematodes, and I'll let Lexi introduce that once she gets some of those passed around. In addition to our survey work, we've also been screening some seed treatments and looking at some different varieties, and if you're interested in those, we will be having a nematode field day next Thursday, so if you want to come visit us again, we'll be going into those in a bit more detail, but I'll let Lexi introduce some of the highlights of the survey.
Hi, I'm Lexi Kessler. As Alyssa said, I'm a recent graduate student and now a research technician. If any of you have been to our nematode field day last year, you probably would have met me and talked about root blasting off of soybeans for SCN. The past couple years, I've spent most of my research working on a nematode survey throughout Delaware and Maryland. And so what we did is from 2019 to 2021, we took soil samples from participating growers throughout, I think it's 12 counties throughout Eastern Shore, Maryland, Delaware, and then one Western Shore, Maryland county, looking for different nematode populations. What we found is that SCN, root knot nematode, and lesion nematode are all present, but we were a little surprised to see how high those populations were, especially for lesion nematode. This basically just confirms and continues to confirm that soybean cyst nematode and root knot nematode are a big issue here, especially for soybeans. So if you're interested in any more of that survey or any more on the management side of things, we have a nematode field day coming up next week. We have postcards that are either coming or I can drop off at dinner, but we would love to see you guys.
Yes, our final students coming in the vehicle there, and we'll have some postcards to pass around. I'll wait just a second. So before we transition from soybeans, I'll introduce Erin, who is one of our undergrad scholars this summer, and she's a UD student, and I'll let her give a little intro on herself.
Hi, as Alyssa said, I'm Erin. I've been working down here as part of a UD research summer program, and my project was focusing on the aggressiveness of different diporphy species in soybeans that previously Lexi had found were common around this area, and it's not done yet, but so far it seems that diporphy longicula is the most aggressive. finish up within the next couple of weeks so then we can finally get some results out.
And if you've never heard of diaporthy, it's a fungus that's around, and you may see it at the end of the season if you ever have white chalky beans at the end. So pod and stem blight is one of the diseases it can cause. And it can also cause some diseases earlier on in the season, stem cankers, pod and stem blight. It's one of those that's around more than we think it is, and so that was what some of our survey work when we were doing these nematodes surveys through the past couple years. We found a lot of diaporthy out there, a little bit more than we were expecting to see, and some of the symptoms can look really similar to soybean sudden death syndrome, where you've got some of those stark yellow and green contrasts. So it's one of those that can easily get misdiagnosed as SDS, but there's quite a bit of diaporthy in the region. So the last student that I'll introduce is Eboni Traverso, and she's a master's student that is working on lima beans, and I'll let her plug.
Hello. As Alyssa just said, I'm Eboni Traverso. I'm a second-year master's student in her lab, and I'm working primarily with lima bean, also a little bit of soybean and cucurbits, but specifically looking at root knot nematode. Very economically damaging, yield-reducing pathogen that has literally thousands of hosts. So we just started our second year of field trials, and if you want to hear more about that, you can come to our nematode field day next Thursday.
So in addition to field crops, we do have a few other projects going on in watermelon and a few things in cucurbits, but we're mostly just focusing on field crops today for this tour. I'll be around for the whole field day, so if you have any questions, I know you're going to get thrown a lot of information today, and but if there's any specific things you'd like to talk about or diseases you've been seeing, let us know. And if you do think you have a field with nematodes, we can help you with surveys and things like that and get those sent off. So I'm here if you need anything, and thanks for stopping, and I'll pass over to David, I think it's next week.